who destroyed everything.
In the past few years, the number of shows we have seen come to life has been extensive. Now and then, we see some of our favorite cartoons or games have a live-action adaptation. Be that as it may, some of the cartoons from our childhood had a completely different world that made them unique. If we look back, there were many cartoons with a theme of swords and sorcery, which kept us hooked to the screen. Conan and HeMan occupied our television screens, and we tried to copy their iconic moves. Weirdly, many shows had this similar theme of swords and sorcery, yet they gave us their own unique perspective on it. Let's look at some cartoon shows that deal with swords and sorcery. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. HeMan and the Masters of the Universe, 1983 to 1985. There have been many rumors of a live-action interpretation of this cartoon from back in the 80s, but something solid has yet to come up. HeMan and the Masters of the Universe gave us iconic characters. HeMan, the evil villain, Skeletor, Orko, Modulok, Jitsu, etc. This show marked the first time a cartoon was created to promote a toy line, which would happen often over the years. Who can forget the iconic line, "I have the power," that became something every kid would shout while playing with their version of He-Man's sword. Recently, Skeletor has become quite popular in pop culture, with many memes of him being shared on social media platforms. One of the funniest and, at the same time, intriguing aspects of He-Man was the voice work for the characters. It's because initially, the cartoon didn't have much of a budget, so it didn't invest in a lot of celebs for the voice work, and thus, a lot of the voices were done by the founder of Filmation, Lou Scheimer, and his family members. The idea for the cartoon was to give context to the toy line for He-Man. Later, we would get another show, a spin-off of He-Man with She-Ra, Princess of Power, with the titular character being He-Man's twin sister. Again, this was also a means of getting girls interested in the female toy line sold separately from He-Man. Over the years, this universe would become a cultural phenomenon, and we would see many interpretations on various platforms, with both live action and several reboots on Netflix. We can never guess if we will ever see the return of the original series in the old format, with the same charm bringing back these bizarre characters. But this show will remain an essential part of our childhood. ThunderCats, 1985 to 1989. Only two cat shows completely took us into their world, and one of them was ThunderCats. With their intense character designs and brilliant animation style, the humanoid cats remain a childhood favorite. Certainly, there were some similarities between this cartoon and the previous one we just talked about, He-Man, but they were able to claim their place in our hearts. It is interesting to note that the animation for this cartoon was done in Japan, which was way ahead in its animation style. The basic premise for the cartoon involved these humanoid cats from the planet Thundera, fleeing their homeworld with a particular sword. Yes, this also had a sword, but it wasn't an ordinary one, as this sword had the Eye of Thunder on its hilt, which was the source of their power. But things didn't go nicely for them, as their enemy mutants are after them to acquire the Eye of Thundera. Who cannot remember the incredible moment we saw Lion-O holding the sword, and holding it in that glorious position? It became one of those iconic moments that we all tried to copy. In 2011, we saw a much more exciting rendition of the animated series, as it shifted to an anime style and got many more fans this time. But the story and the plot could never be recreated, and this was the only dissatisfaction with this reboot. The only thing in recent years that would get close to the original series is the graphic novels, which also had the same pulpy artwork similar to the animation style.
Conan, the mightiest warrior ever!
Conan the Adventurer, 1992 to 93. Conan was a part of pop culture way before the cartoon series became our television. The series kept in line with the sorcery shows of that time, and one can draw numerous parallels to He-Man. The series had to change certain things from the source material to keep up with this trend. The character first debuted in Weird Tales in 1932, and ever since then, he has ruled amongst the various characters in the history of fictional tales. According to the original arc of the character, he was more of a warrior who would go around on different adventures. But since all the other shows associated the protagonist with a weapon at that time, Conan got his star metal sword. But this won't be the only star metal item on the list, as many weapons will appear throughout the narrative. And yes, the primary villain, Wrath-Amon, will be, after all, the star metal material in the world to become the most powerful being. Since the cartoon was made for a specific audience, they had to change a lot of aspects of the character too. This show showed him to be caring because fans of the original version clearly remember him as ruthless, even though the show didn't live up to the expectations of the fans of the original character. Many new fans gathered around for this rendition of the character. This show will still get some good reviews and a sequel, which didn't end up as successful as the original and only lasted one season. The failure was because this show further tried to soften the character's arcs, so much that it wasn't fitting to call it a Conan show anymore.
And the Star Sword. And so, with Star Sword in hand, Black Star
1981 to 82. Fans only remember the likes of HeMan and ThunderCats, the shows that paved the way for the sword and sorcery theme, but they didn't see this success. People might have forgotten all about Black Star, but honestly, there wouldn't be any success in this genre if it weren't for this 1980s masterpiece. Again, similarities with character arcs match massively, and even origin stories do pop up. Unlike most warrior protagonists, John Blackstar is an astronaut trapped on Cigar. Remember something called Buck Rogers, anyone? Recently, fans have had the opportunity to revisit this classic when a complete DVD collection of the shows was released, and it even managed to return to television. Sadly, the show only lasted 13 episodes. Meanwhile, other shows in this league lasted for more than 100 episodes. It would be interesting to see this show get a reboot, with many shows returning nowadays. While the theme might be something we have gotten used to, it won't be surprising to see some fans of this old show writing a fun and innovative version for the streaming platforms. Who can forget that opening theme that brings fond memories similar to Conan, instead of the pop themes of other cartoon shows of that time?
Strength, his courage, and his fabulous sun's sword against the forces of
Thundar the Barbarian, 1980 to 81. Thundar the Barbarian is distinct in its depiction of a post-apocalyptic Earth, drawing inspiration from recognizable geographical features found in comic books. Unlike other shows set in entirely new worlds, Thundar's universe arises from the aftermath of a catastrophic event, where a runaway planet's collision brought about utter destruction. However, this cataclysmic event wasn't the end, but rather the beginning of a world teeming with magic, sorcery, and primal savagery. While influences from various sources, like Star Wars and Flash Gordon, can be detected throughout the series, what sets Thundar apart is its unique fusion of sorcery and technology woven into its narrative. This blend creates a captivating backdrop against which the characters navigate their adventures, adding depth and intrigue to the storyline. The one thing that affected this show has to be the animation style, since this needed money, and being among the very first shows that brought these narratives into this format didn't help much. But even then, some of the character designs intrigued first-time viewers, thanks to comic book legend Jack Kirby. But the primary thing one can notice based on this series is that Star Wars had an impact, and everyone wants to get something out of that by copying certain elements. The resemblance between Thundar and HeMan is uncanny, from the hairstyle to the loincloth. While it might be challenging to please these modern audiences, we can be sure that it won't be forgotten that easily.
What's happening?
Dungeons & Dragons, 1983 to 85. In 1974, the world was introduced to the concept of Dungeons & Dragons, an unstoppable event that persisted. Following the game's popularity, many attempts have been made to bring this brilliant concept to the screens, but the question of how continued to bother creators. Then there was the 1983 animated show that explored an interesting concept to make kids feel part of this world of sorcery, magic, and absolute madness. It saw 6 children going to an amusement park and taking the Dungeons & Dragons ride that brought them to a whole new world, and they had to go through all sorts of adventures to return to their world. We can say C.S. Lewis might haven't enjoyed it very much. Each of the kids had a particular identity that associated them with certain powers, which allowed all the opening roles of the games to be fulfilled. Then there was the variety of creatures that would end up appearing in the show, the likes of unicorns, hobbits, dragons, owlbears, mimics, giant snails, etc. The only thing that fans needed clarification on was our hero's ending and fate, with the series having an ambiguous ending. This show is a forgotten treasure, but the recent feature film adaptation undoubtedly helped people feel nostalgic about the masterpiece. Highlander, the animated series, 1994 to 96. While the 1980s saw a lot of animated shows explore narratives with swords and sorcery, a film with a similar theme was released, and it would trigger absolute madness amongst the fans. Highlander, 1986, saw Connor McLeod discover he is an immortal and is then trained by none other than James Bond himself, Sean Connery's Ramirez. We would witness several spin-offs and sequels, most of which didn't see much success, but still managed to gather exciting fanfare. Highlander the animated series, was an attempt at raking in on the franchise's success while trying to focus on a much younger target audience. This rendition focused on Connor MacLeod, the son of Quentin MacLeod, who went around looking for the other immortals after his father's death to learn how to be immortal. Not only that, he intended to share his knowledge with the world, and his enemy was Coltan, who was going around killing the other immortals. Even though the animated show won't see much success, we can all agree that it was way better than all the movie sequels fans had to suffer through.
It's high adventure with the Pirates of Darkwater.
The Pirates of Darkwater, 1991 to 92. With the rise of animated shows, there weren't many successful franchises except for the fantastic works of Hanna-Barbera. The Pirates of Darkwater was a short-lived attempt at the genre of swords and sorcery, with only 21 episodes, followed by a game that came out 1 year later. The series focused on Red and his gang as they stopped their world, Myr, from being devoured by an evil substance called dark water. A particularly unique thing about this show is that it also explored the world of pirates, which was hardly explored in cartoons. It does sound somewhat like the anime One Piece, as most of Myr was water, and the crew of heroes made their stops at the islands. While most shows around this time had each episode having a unique narrative that didn't have continuity, Darkwater did have some kind of continuity. Fans who revisited the show realized it had some individual elements that made it far more intelligent and not just another cartoon for a one-time watch. Even the voice work for this show resonated with the fans, as it would hook them up to watch the show. Remarkably, the camaraderie between the heroes was very reminiscent of the bond shared by Han Solo, Leia Skywalker, and Luke from Star Wars.
Cor Goth.
Cor Goth of Barbarian, 2006. Cor Goth of Barbarian won't see the light of day, as only the pilot episode was produced and saw a lot of success. When this episode was released, it saw a lot of positive responses from the audience, and Adult Swim instantly decided to extend the narrative with a complete series. But the show was dropped, and the show's pilot episode will be the only thing fans can enjoy. It is wild to imagine what the success of this series could have been, since it primarily focused on parodying this entire genre of swords and sorcery. Even the protagonist, Cor Goth, voiced by Diedrich Bader, was a parody of the likes of Conan and HeMan with his muscular build, hairstyle, and loincloth. The setting was inspired by Thundar the Barbarian's post-apocalyptic world. All the character designs are hilarious and make for a fantastic watch. Jindy Tartakovsky did the artwork for the show, and he has explored this franchise before. It is a product of a fan of this genre, and we can only hope to see a complete series of Cor Goth's adventures come out shortly. Galtar and the Golden Lance, 1985 to 86. Imagine Leia and Luke teaming up with Han Solo to destroy the Empire, but this time, they aren't in an intergalactic battle, and their world is filled with sorcery and magical creatures. That's Galtar and the Golden Lance. Princess Goleta, her younger brother Zorn, and Galtar team up to stop Tormak, another one of Hanna-Barbera's creations. As a part of the fantastic world of Hanna-Barbera, Galtar and the Golden Lance had one season of 21 episodes. Like the duo's previous show, this one also had a very random ending, with the fight between Galtar and Tormak left open-ended.
When will our king return?
King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, 1992 to 94. Over the years, many interpretations of the Arthurian legend have existed, and while some were exceptional, others didn't live up to expectations. In 1992, a Sunday morning animated series was released for kids to watch. Living up to the genre's tropes, King Arthur had this mighty sword, the Excalibur, and the evil sorcerer tried to harm the Knights of Justice in their various attempts. But things turned exciting when Queen Morgana captured King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. As the Grand Wizard Merlin cannot free them, he tries to find their replacement to fight the evil enchantress. The replacement includes New York Knights football quarterback Arthur King and his teammates. They take their pledge, fairness to all, to protect the weak and vanquish the evil, and head out to look for the 12 keys of truth to free the Knights of the Round Table. The concept might sound cheesy, but it was a masterpiece for kids, and they continued their fandom over the years. One of the best things about this series has to be the character designs, which have an interesting take on the armor for the characters.
Whoever gets both Triforces will rule this land forever. You must help me, Link.
Hey, for you,
The Legend of Zelda, 1989. The Legend of Zelda is one of the best games from Nintendo that has only managed to gather a bigger fan base over the years. There have been a lot of discussions regarding a possible live-action adaptation of the game, but there's no confirmed news yet. But an animated series came out as a part of the more famous Super Mario Bros. Super Show. Even though fans won't agree with this adaptation because of its unfaithfulness towards the game, it is the only adaptation we will see for a while. That said, this show reeks of bad writing in every possible sense. The show changed many things and tried to create a specific dynamic between Link and Zelda. Almost something flirty happened between them, and Zelda often joined Link on his mission, but none of them were inferior to the others, as they continued to keep up their competence and crazy skills. Even though it earned many bad reviews, it managed to create exciting visuals based on the minimal details of the character at the time.
I hear the sound of machinery. Dorno, come.
The Herculoids, 1967 to 69. The Herculoids will be the oldest show we will discuss on this list, and it also managed to see a lot of reruns to great success. All the episodes had plots quite similar to the best shows of the 1960s, including Johnny Quest and Space Ghost. Interestingly, the planet where this series is based was referenced in one of the episodes of Space Ghost. The basic plot involved the Herculoids battling different villains to protect their planet from outer space. In the series, only 3 humanoid characters communicated in English. This cartoon had a tone quite similar to many American shows of that time, since it had a family theme with the Herculoids consisting of the family of Xandor, Tara, and their son Dorno. The show's most creative aspect must be the shapeshifting, blob-like duo of Gloop and Gleep. One of the most extraordinary things about the show was Xandor using his slingshot, while others had completely different weapons. There was hardly any continuity, and each episode had a completely different set of aliens coming to invade their home planet. Dave the Barbarian, 2004 to 05. Cor Goth wasn't the only attempt to generate some laughs from this genre, as we saw Dave the Barbarian 2004 walk on a similar theme. One can see the muscular protagonist with his weapons and team of magical beings, which is the basic trope for most of the shows in the genre. But Dave, yes, the hero is named Dave. He is a cowardly barbarian who lives with his 2 sisters, Candy and Fang. The 3 and their wizardly uncle protect their kingdom from the Dark Lord Chuckles, the silly piggy. This show is riddled with funny limericks, as even the narrator has a role to play in the show apart from his regular duties. He often breaks the 4th wall, and even talks to the characters. Once, he was captured by the Dark Lord himself. What works well for this show is its juxtaposition of modern and ancient elements to generate a sense of humor. But this show is not entirely for kids, as there are certain jokes they might find quite challenging to perceive, including Twinkle the Marble Horse, a magical pony suffering from depression. Dragon's Lair, 1984 to 85. Based on the 1983 game with the same name, Dragon's Lair was a series that only depended on the continued excitement of the audience. With the adventures of Dirk the Daring, the show tried to keep us on our tiptoes. Each time there was a commercial break, as a cliffhanger appeared, the question, "What would you do?" would be asked, and we would be left wondering about our means of solving the situation. Even though the show had a lot of source material to depend on, it didn't see much success, due to not having much to offer an audience that was used to this content. The character's arc was even dumbed down to make it something that kids would find interesting to watch. There was an episode that focused on the protagonist trying to acquire a birthday cake. Yes, a birthday cake. One of the other things that held back the medium for the audience was the animation style of the cartoon. It didn't help, and the recent DVD release for the entire series didn't see much success either. Samurai Jack, 2001 to 17. Last, we have the masterpiece from the genre veteran Genndy Tartakovsky, Samurai Jack. Unlike the barbarians and the ruthless warriors from the other shows, here we have a samurai who faces the dark mystical powers of Aku and is sent into the future. The show has an epic animation style that is still relevant, and it even saw a return with a 5th season in 2017. Since the character is trying to return to his time, he is initially desperate, but becomes calmer as time passes. There are many exciting things about the character arc and how the episodes are made to look for the audience. One particular focus has to be the continuous battle between the darkness and the good, skilled with a variety of knowledge due to his travels in childhood. The titular hero is entirely experienced in all sorts of battles. Another thing that really works for our hero is his silence and reaction to uncomfortable situations due to his introverted persona. It is ridiculous to imagine the variety of shows that emerged from the same theme. Some had samurai, others had pirates, and a few even had elements of sci-fi sprinkled on top to give them their distinct flavor. With the variety of content we are getting nowadays, we can be sure that this theme hasn't died down. and there's a lot more yet to explore, with reboots and reruns always around the corner. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.